All right, so this is lesson 4.6. Our math goal is multiplying whole numbers by decimals. So write down if you know anything about multiplying whole numbers by decimals and then come back to me. All right, before we get started, let's review a little bit, okay? So decimal. So remember, a decimal is less than a whole, okay? Remember that? So this is the place value chart that we looked at before. So here's our decimal point. So on the left-hand side of our place value chart, we have our ones, tens, hundreds, and thousands. Remember that? Ones is worth a 1, 10 is worth 10, hundreds is worth 10 times 10, right? Or 100, and 1,000 is worth 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000, right? Okay, remember that. And then remember, when we move to the right-hand side of the place value chart, we have the tenths with the THS. Remember, there's no ones on the place value chart because its power is a 10. And then we have hundredths, then we have thousands. Remember, tenths is the same thing as 0.1 or 1 over 10. Hundredths, 0.01 or 1 over 100. Thousands, 0.001 or 1 over 1,000. Okay, remember that? And remember that if we move to the left, it gets bigger. If we move to the right, it gets smaller, right? Because 1 out of 10, one thing out of 10 things is less than one whole thing, right? Or hundredths, remember that's smaller. 1 out of 100 is way less than 1 out of 10, right? Because this is divided up into 100 pieces. This is only divided up into 10 pieces. So this is actually bigger, okay? So remember that. And same thing with the thousands. This is 1 out of 1,000 things. So it's way less. You cut up a pizza into 1,000 slices, you only get one, way less than you cut up the same pizza to 10 slices and you get one of those, right? This is going to be a little tiny sliver. So remember, it gets smaller. Okay, so that's going to be important for us to remember. So let's look at this example. What is 10 times a number? 10 times a number of 412 thousands. 412 thousands. 10 times a number. So that means I have 10 times 412 thousands. Are the digits going to shift to the left or the right? And how many places? Remember, I'm multiplying by 10. So is it going to get bigger or smaller? Good. So if you said bigger because it's 10 times, you are right, right? And so which way are my numbers going to have to shift? If I wanted to get bigger, the numbers have to shift to the left. If you said left, you are correct. And then how many places? So let's take a look at that. Okay, so I put it on my place value chart here. So it's 10 times 412,000. So I put the 4 in the tens, the 1 in the hundreds, and the 2 in the thousands, right? And it's going to get 10 times bigger. So how many times is it going to shift? We said one time, right? Because there's 1 0. So the 4 is going to shift over to the ones place. So the 4 will be here. The 1 will shift to the 10, so the 1 will be here. And the 2 will shift to the 100, so that will be there. So it's going to become 4 and 12 hundredths because it's getting 10 times bigger. Okay, so now what happens if we multiply it by 100 times? 100 times a 412 thousandths. So again, are the digits going to shift to the left or the right? Remember, I'm making it 100 times bigger. So if it gets bigger, it's got to shift to the, what do you think? And how many places? So think about it, and then come back to me. So if you said that it's going to shift 2 places to the left, you are right. Remember, because to the left, it gets bigger, and it's 2 places because the 100 has 2 zeros. So it's the same thing as 10 times 10. And remember, our place value chart is powers of 10. So let's see that in action. So again, so you can see it in the place value chart, it's 100 times 412,000, right? So I put my 412 thousands in my place value chart, but this time it's 10 times 10, which is 100, right? So it's two place values and it's getting bigger. So the 4 is going to shift two places. It's going to go 1, 2. So the 4 will go here now. The 1 will shift 1, 2. So that'll go in the ones. And then the 2 will shift 1, 2. So that'll go there. So it becomes 41 and 2 tenths. Okay, so what's going to happen now if I multiply it times 1,000? So it's getting 1,000 times bigger. Remember, 1,000 is 10 times 10 times 10. So how many shifts are going to happen now, and which way is it going to move? So think about it and then come back to me. Okay, so if you said it's going to move 3 places to the left, you would be correct, right? And let's see it in action. Okay, so it's 1,000 times 412 thousands. So remember, 1,000 is the same thing as 10 times 10 times 10. So it's going to, we said it's going to shift over 3 places, right, to the left because it's getting bigger. So my 4 is going to go 1, 2, 3 places. So the 4 is going to go there. Then the 1 is going to shift over 3 places. 1, 2, 3. So the 1's going to go there. And then the 2 is also going to shift over 3 places, right? So it'll go 1, 2, 3. So it'll go there. Become all right. So let's continue. Okay, so now let's figure out where our decimal goes. Okay, so we saw the shifting and why it's happening. So let's look at an example using money. So the Ruiz children had a yard sale. They sold some old toys. They made a table to show how many toys they sold and how much they earned. So they sold 3 jump ropes, okay, for 9 cents. So it's 3 times 9, which is 27 cents, right? And how do you write 27 cents in money form, right? Is 0.27. So that's the same thing, right? 4 marbles at 2 cents. So it's 4 times 2, which is 8 cents. How did you do 8 cents? Good, yeah, the 8 goes in the hundredth spot, right? You got to put a 0 in the 10th spot because there's nothing there, because that's how you show money. You need 2 place values after the decimal when you show money, right? Okay, 6 toy cars at 12 cents, so it's 6 times 12, which is 72. So the decimal goes right there, 0.72, right? 5 puzzles at 30 cents each. 5 times 30 is 150. So where does the decimal go, right? Because you need 2 placeholders for it, right? So how do you know where the decimal goes? Think about it and then come back to me. All right, so where does the decimal go? So you know when you're dealing with money, there are 2 decimal places for cents, right? So there, you could have had another answer, but the main thing is that when you're dealing with money, cents have 2 places, right? After the decimal, because it's worth hundreds, right? Because there's 100 pennies in a dollar, all right? Okay, so now let's take look at this example to see if we can figure out what's happening to the decimals. The owners of the Seven Seas Spice Company want to sell twice as much spice in the future as they do now. The table shows how much spice they will sell in a week now and how much they want to sell in the future. Show how the answers by adding. So close, 3 tons, so 2 times 3 is 6 tenths. Or another way to look at that, it is 3 tenths plus 3 tenths, right? Is 6 tenths. Remember, addition, subtraction, line up the decimals. Cinnamon, 4 hundredths or 4 cents. So 2 times 4 is 8. And look at where our decimals at. But remember, if you're adding 0.4 plus 0.4, right, if we were to line that up, it would just be 0.04 plus 0.04 because we line up the decimals and it just leaves you with that, right? 0.8, which is what we got there. Okay, let's look at the next one. 2 times 7 cents, which is 2 times 7, which is 14. It's the same thing, right? It was 0.07 plus 0.07. Look what's happening here. 7 plus 7 is 14. Carry my 1, bring down my decimal, and it just makes it 14 cents. So notice what's happening there. Let's look at the next example, and then you're going to see maybe a little bit of a pattern. Okay, let's look at this one. 6 tenths or 60 cents. All right, so that's 60 cents. 2 times 60 cents makes it $1.20. So if we add it up, right, 0.6 plus 0.6, look what's happening here. 6 plus 6 is 12. Put my 2 down, carry my 1, but I got to bring my decimal down. Look what's happening there. Look where the decimal is at now. So it's 1.2. So do we notice anything of what's going on here? So look at the number of decimal places in each of the decimal factors, and then look at the decimal places in each product. What pattern do you see? Then come back to me. See if you notice a pattern and then come back to me. Okay, so hopefully you saw that the number of decimal places in the product is the same as the number of decimal places in the decimal factor. So watch. Here, 2 times 3/10, how many decimal places do we have? Just 1, right? And look, 1 decimal place. Here, we have 1, 2 decimal places. We have 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places, right? And look, how many decimal places in the product? 1, 2. There's also 2. Now let's look at the next one. How many decimal places? 1, 2. How many decimal places? 1, 2. 2 decimal places. Now let's look at this one. 1 decimal place. How many decimal places? 1 decimal place. Okay. So is this the same pattern you saw in the problems before? So in the problems we did before, remember, yes, they had the same pattern. So if we were to go back and look at the other problem, let me pause this and go to it. So let's look at this one. Remember this one? So this one had 1, 2 decimal places. And look at your answer. Your answer also had 1, 2 decimal places. You had 1, 2 decimal places, 1, 2 decimal places in your answer, 1, 2 decimal places, 1, 2 decimal places in your answer, 1, 2 decimal places, 2 decimal places in your answer. Okay, so that's very important. You just learned something very, very important. So what important thing did you learn? The number of decimal places that you see in one of your factors, that's how many decimal places you need in your answers. And let's take a look at that. Okay, it's very important. Let me repeat that again. The number of decimal places that you see in your factors, that's how many decimal places you need in your product. In this case, only one of the factors had decimal places, but you will see later on when we multiply decimals by decimals, that will change. So the number of decimal places you see, that's how many decimal places you need in your product. Remember, product is the answer to a multiplication problem. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so let's look at this. 8/10 times 6, okay? I have 8/10 times 6. I know I'm gonna just multiply. 6 times 8 is 48, right? So 48. And remember that the number of decimal places that you have in your factor, that's how many decimal places you need in your product. I have 1 decimal place, so that means I need to put 1 decimal place. My answer is 4.8, okay? So I'm going to do 40 times 3. I'm going to ignore the 0, and I'm just going to do 4 times 3, which is my 12. And I'm going to bring back my 0. I have one decimal place, right? So I need to add a decimal place right there. So it equals 12. 9 times 5 is 45. 45, and I have 2 decimal places. I need to do 2 decimal places, so it equals 0.45. 45 hundredths is my answer. This is very, very important. Don't worry about writing this down because I'm going to give you one that you can glue into your math notebook. So when doing multiplication, you line up the numbers on the right. Do not align the decimal points, and that'll come in handy when we have decimal by decimal. So just line up the numbers, align the numbers, multiply like you would normally, and find the product. So just ignore the decimals and just multiply. Count the decimal places, start on the right, and move the decimal that many places, just like we did in the previous example, okay? So very important. You line up the numbers, not the decimal places. So like remember in addition, subtraction, line up the decimals, remember that song? Not here, not in multiplication. Do not line up the decimals. Do not. Okay, this is a little bit different. Just line up the numbers, multiply, and then count the decimal places, and then just move it over. All right, so let's try some. Okay, so let's try some. You can do these, okay? Just write them down. 333 times 0.7, 421 times 2 tenths, and then 2700 times 31. Just ignore the decimals and multiply normally, okay? So just ignore the decimals, multiply normally. If you want to, you can rewrite this so you can make it easier. So you can rewrite 333 times 7 tenths. You can rewrite it to 3 times 0.7, because I think you're used to seeing them that way, right? And then 421 times 2 tenths. Oops, not a 0. Erase it. Times 2. So the 2 has to be over here, and my decimal is there because I'm aligning the numbers, not the decimals, okay? And this is just 27 times 31. So ignore the decimals for right now and just simply multiply and then come back to me and I'll help you with the decimals if you're not sure how to do that. Okay, I just rewrote it because it's a little bit easier for me to multiply it this way. 3 times 7 is 21, carry my 2. 3 times 7 is 21 plus 2 is 23, not a 2. Carry my 2. 3 times 7 is 21 plus 2 is 23. Now, this is what I mean. How many decimal places? One decimal place. So that means you put your decimal at the very end, and I got to move it one place because it's going to shift over one place. So it's going to move here. It's shifting over one place. So my answer is 233 and 1/10. Okay. So same thing for this one, 421 times 2. So all I did is 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. If you rewrote it the other way, that's fine. I have one decimal place. I put my decimal in and I shifted over one. So my answer is 84 and 2/10. Okay. 27 times 31. I'm going to ignore the decimal. I'm just going to multiply like normal. 7 times 1 is 7. 2 times 1 is 2. 3 times 7 is 21. Carry my 2. 2 times 3 is 6 plus 2 is 8. Then I'm going to add it up. 7 plus 0 is 7. 2 plus 1 is 3. 8. How many decimal places? 1, 2. I add my decimal place. 1, 2, 8, and 37 hundredths. So if you can multiply whole numbers, then you can multiply decimals, right? All you got to do is align the numbers, count how many decimal places, and then shift your decimal when you are done. Pretty easy, right? So please write down what you learned today, proof of learning by solving a problem, a reflection or question. So do a problem that involves a whole number times a decimal, all right? That's it. Have a great day.